Welcome to The Flow, hosted by Bob Martin, slightly edgy glimpses into politics, culture, society, and being human.
Hello, good people. Hey, welcome back to The Flow. I'm Bob Martin. Hey, in order to go with the flow, you first have to understand the flow. Today's episode is a longer one and a more complicated one. It pulls together three different things I've spent some time around. One is the courtroom experience with domestic violence, some hard data on childhood trauma, and some uncomfortable psychology about how leaders and followers find each other. Now, stick with me. It goes somewhere worth arriving. Here's what I want to ask you today. Now, after you've had a chance to watch, and I want to ask you if you've seen this pattern play out in your own life or in someone that you love or in your own family or in the news. You don't have to name names. Just naming the pattern is enough. I'd love to see your comments, read your comments. I read every single one. I mean that. So drop it below. And just one other little note. The flow's my way of paying back. So after production expenses, all the remaining paid subscription money goes to good charities around the world. So when you subscribe and get a paid subscription, you're also feeding someone. All right, let's get into it. I spent decades in rooms most people never have to enter. Courtrooms where I prosecuted men who beat the women who loved them. Courtrooms where I defended those same kinds of men. Therapy rooms, a little later as a clinical social worker where I sat with the wreckage on both sides of that equation and tried to understand what I was actually looking at. And for the past years, I also watched something that seemed at first to have nothing to do with any of that. I watched people defend Donald Trump with a ferocity that defied ordinary explanation. Not just politically, but personally, passionately, as though the facts didn't matter because for them, somehow they didn't. So I want to warn you up front, this one is longer than usual and more complicated. It pulls together actual experience, hard data, and some uncomfortable psychology, and it asks you to hold all of it at once before the picture clears up. I thought about trimming it down. I decided not to, because the pattern only makes sense if you see the whole shape of it at once. So stay with me, please. I promise it lands somewhere worth arriving. Now here's where it starts. Picture a home where the rule is simple. Obey. Don't question the parent. Don't question the preacher. Don't question the Bible. Don't question God. Doubt is treated as disrespect, and disrespect gets punished. And punishment is how you learn what's true. Psychologists have studied this home for decades. And Bob Altemeyer, who spent his career researching what he called right-wing authoritarianism, found something specific. The adult who submits automatically to authority, who trusts a strong leader over their own judgment, who needs the world sorted cleanly into loyal and disloyal, isn't born that way. That posture gets built in childhood out of exactly the kind of household I just described. Obedience training, conventionalism, punishment for stepping out of line. And Altemeyer noted something else worth sitting with. Certain kinds of religious upbringings are especially good at producing it. That single household, it turns out, doesn't just raise one kind of person, it raises two. And the two of them, it's so weird, find each other. Now, there's a concept from transactional analysis I think about constantly. Therapists call it a T-shirt message. Picture two people walking through the world wearing invisible shirts that announce, without either of them saying a word, exactly what they're each looking for. One shirt reads, "I am abused." The other reads, "I am an abuser." They don't meet by accident. They recognize each other. Now, here's how the shirt gets printed for the one who will be abused. A child grows up believing, at a level below language, that she is not worth protecting, not worth choosing, low enough on the ladder of belonging that nobody would fight for her. Then someone shows up who seems strong, who offers care, attention, a little bit of protection. It feels like being rescued. She'll take a pound of shit, excuse the language, for a teaspoon of sugar because the sugar is the first sweetness she's ever been offered, and she doesn't yet know it's supposed to come without the rest. The cycle has a shape, and it repeats with brutal consistency. First comes the sugar, the concern, the protection. Then slowly, the strength that felt protective turns and starts pointing at her instead of at the world on her behalf. And then the abuse. Then the pulling away, the guilt, the promise to be better. And then it starts again. I've watched this. I watch it play out in real courtrooms on real families more times than I can count. I spent years in domestic violence and dependency court, and if you sit in that room long enough, the pattern stops being a theory and becomes something closer to, weather. I've seen women come through that courtroom with 3 children by 3 different fathers, and every one of those men hit her. Not because she has bad judgment. Because the nervous system that got wired in her childhood doesn't know how to recognize any kind of love. It recognizes the shirt. It walks towards the shirt every single time, even after everything, after the restraining orders and the hospital visits and the promises to herself that this time will be different. It's not a character flaw. It's a wound repeating itself because nobody has ever helped her see it. And if you think that this kind of a thing doesn't happen to everybody, it comes also in all the little messages, the questions like, who are you going to marry when you grow up? Not what are you going to be when you grow up? The lessons and the preaching that women are subservient to men, the little messages of the culture that say that women are a second-hand citizen. These little messages, they accumulate. So I've often sat, even with that, so many times that it stopped making me angry a long time ago. It kind of just makes me sad. And it made me start seeing the same shape in other places that I looked, because it's the same shirt at a Trump rally. The Centers for Disease Control has tracked something called Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACEs, across the country for years. Nearly 2 out of every 3 American adults, 2/3, report at least one adverse childhood experience. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, a parent lost to addiction, a home run on fear instead of love. Now, 1 in 6 adults report 4 or more. That's significant. That manifests in their adulthood. A child raised in that kind of home learns the same lesson the woman in dependency court learned. Find the strongest voice in the room, attach to it, don't question it, your safety depends on it. That lesson doesn't stay a childhood lesson. It rides along into adulthood, and it's still running the show when a loud, certain dominating voice steps onto a stage and says, I alone can fix this. I will protect you. Everyone else is the enemy. Now, for a nervous system built the way I just described, That isn't a campaign speech. It's relief. It's the first sweetness. It's a pound of suffering for a teaspoon of certainty, and by now they've had a lifetime of practice paying that price. Now look at the other shirt. The one that says, I am an abuser, or more precisely in the version that shows up in politics and in pulpits, I am the strong one and you need me. There's research on a specific personality that thrives in exactly this role. A researcher named Ekin Oak ran a series of studies on people who publicly display both virtue and victimhood at the same time. The ones who provoke a fight and then hold up the reaction as proof that they're being persecuted. Across every study, the people who do this the most score highest on narcissism, manipulation, and lack of empathy. And it isn't random. It's a strategy for extracting things from other people. Attention, loyalty, money, followers. Psychologists call it by a fancy name, non-reciprocal resource transfer. The signaler takes, he never gives back. Now, religion, it turns out, is a perfect tool for this kind of person because claiming to speak for God comes with authority nobody can take from you. Researchers distinguish between people whose faith is genuinely internalized and people who use faith as an instrument for status, for control, for an audience. Let's take a breath. Okay. A 2026 study found that every measured type of narcissism was linked to the instrumental version of religion. Not one type was linked to the genuine kind. There's a specific flavor of this called communal narcissism. The person who brags not about wealth or power, but about being the most caring, the most selfless, the most spiritually involved person in the room, while researchers who actually measured their behavior found that they were no more generous than anyone else. They just believed they were. And that's the man behind the podium, who was also raised in the same nursery. He learned the same lesson as the woman in dependency court learned, except he learned it to wear the other shirt. Strength gets rewarded. Certainty gets rewarded. He never had to develop real empathy because performing it worked just as well and worked better because nobody can call out a man who claims God is standing behind him without becoming, in his story, the persecutor. Now, here's the part that took me the longest to see. These aren't two separate stories that happen to rhyme. They're one transaction. Research who's studied destructive leadership have found that authoritarian followers and unethical leaders don't just tolerate each other. They pair up. And together, they make worse decisions than either one would make alone. The followers' need for a strong voice and the leaders' need for an audience aren't a coincidence sitting next to each other. They're a matched set, built for each other by two different households that were underneath it all, teaching the exact same lesson. Obey. Don't question. The strongest voice in the room is the only safe place to stand. Now, I want to be careful here, because I don't want you walking away from this thinking that every pairing where one person is strong and one person needs something is broken. It isn't. Some of the most loving relationships I know are built on exactly that kind of difference. The detail-oriented partner and the big-picture dreamer. The one who plans and the one who imagines. Each of them making the other more whole. Now, that kind of complementary pairing causes its own friction and its own arguments about both the small stuff and the big stuff, and it's still one of the most beautiful things two people can build together. The difference isn't whether someone is strong and someone else needs something, every relationship has some version of that. The difference is whether the pairing runs on fear or runs on freedom. Whether you can leave the room and still be safe, or whether leaving the room is the most dangerous thing you could do. Whether questioning the person you love gets you closer to them or gets you punished. So, where does that leave us? Now, I don't have a policy fix for any of us. There really isn't one. You can't legislate someone out of a trauma response, and you can't shame someone out of a nervous system that was built before they were old enough to choose anything. But I do believe in the thing I learned and in therapy rooms over and over the hard way. People don't change because you prove them wrong. They change because someone gently enough holds up a mirror they can stand to look into. So if you're the one who has driven 5 states to hear a voice that finally made you feel safe, I'm not making this to shame you. I'm making it because I think you deserve to know why that voice found you so easily and what it might cost you to keep paying that price. And if you're the one who has watched someone you love return to the same kind of hurt again and again, whether that hurt wears a wedding ring or a campaign hat, I want you to hear this too. Contempt has never once brought anyone home. Way back, if there is one, runs through understanding before it runs through argument. We were all raised in some nursery or another. Some of us got taught that love and fear travel together. Some of us got lucky enough to learn they don't have to. Naming which one raised you is not weakness. It's the only door out. I'll see you Monday for the Flow Calm Waters and next Wednesday for the Flow Weekly. Stay awake, stay aware, and stay engaged. I'm Bob Martin. This is the flow. In order to go with the flow, you have to understand the flow.